Good evening, and thank you all for coming. My name is Denise McKelvey, and I will be the moderator for this evening's candidate debate. The Citizens Clean Election Committee is the sponsor for this evening's event. The Clean Elections Act is a campaign finance reform measure initiated by Arizona citizens and passed by voters in 1998. Participation as a clean elections candidate is strictly voluntary. The system provides full funding for qualified candidates who agree to abide by the Clean Elections Act and rules. To qualify for funding, participating candidates must illustrate the support of their constituents by gathering $5 qualifying contributions from registered voters in their legislative district. The candidates agree to adhere to contribution and spending limits and may not accept money from special interest groups. They also agree to participate in these forums. As we move into the debate, we encourage audience questions. If you have questions, please print them clearly on the card that was given to you when you walked in and hold it up. One of our volunteers will pick up the cards and deliver them to me. We screen the questions for clarity to eliminate duplications, speeches, or personal attacks on candidates. If you need another card, just raise your hand. The debate is scheduled for 1 hour, so we may not be able to get to all the audience questions, but we'll do our best. There's an independent timer who will see to it that all the candidates have equal time to answer questions and will tell them when their time is up. Our format this evening will be opening statements, 2 minutes each. We'll have a quick lightning round, 2 minutes to answer audience questions for each of them, 2 minutes to answer candidate questions, and then closing statements again will be 2 minutes each. We ask that you remain polite to all the candidates and give them a fair and uninterrupted hearing, no matter how strongly you may agree or disagree with what's being said. This means no applause, outbursts, or cheers, except for now when we introduce the candidates. This is especially important as closed captioning services will be made available after the debate for those individuals that have hearing impaired. As such, I will refer to each candidate by their full name prior to each question and ask that the candidates speak clearly into the microphone. Our participating candidates tonight are Mr. Andy Biggs, Republican, running for a seat in the Senate, Mr. Scott Glover, Democrat, running for the seat in the Senate, Mr. Eddie Farnsworth, Republican, running for a seat in the House, and Mr. DJ Rothans, Democrat, running for a seat in the House. The order in which the candidates will speak has been determined by alphabetical order by last name, starting with the Senate, and will progress from that starting point. The closing order will be determined by reverse alphabetical order by last name. Mr. Andy Biggs, will you please start open remarks?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. I appreciate your willingness to come and be participating in this event and in the campaign, and I also am grateful to Clean Elections for giving us this opportunity. As someone who is not a Clean Elections candidate, I'm not required to be here, but I wanted to be here to be with my opponent again and to be out in front of the citizens, especially of LD12. I am a lifelong, or I should say I'm a native of Arizona. I was born in Tucson and raised there, and my wife and I and our children came to Gilbert in 1986. So we've been here almost 30 years. I currently serve in the state Senate and have served for 4 years. During my first year of my first term in the Senate, I was elected to be the majority leader in the Senate. And then in my second term in the first year, I was elected to be the Senate president, where I serve there today. Education has been a priority for me. The educational structure we have created in Arizona has produced 4 of the top 11 ranked high schools in the nation, 4 of the top ranked public high schools in the nation. No other state has more than 1. But we can do better. It really isn't how much we spend, it's where we spend it. We're spending way too much money outside of the classroom. I was reviewing an audit of one school district today that spends over 50 cents of every dollar in administrative cost, not sending it to the classroom. We need to refocus the money that we spend and make sure it gets to the classroom. Our economic initiatives have produced tremendous results. Recent surveys have indicated Arizona's tops for entrepreneurship and job growth. We're a top state for our business environment. That means more Arizonans can find employment here and enjoy the benefits of meaningful work. And that means careers, not just jobs. We lost 365,000 jobs during the recession. We've brought back 300,000 jobs with the initiatives that we've undertaken at the legislature. I ask for your support and your vote for the next 2 years.
Thank you. Mr. Scott Glover.
Good evening, and thank you to the Clean Election Commission and to Senator Biggs for being here and everybody for being here. And I wanted to thank everybody who's helped us get to this point so far, collecting signatures and $5 donations, and to Chris and John and my family. My name is Scott Glover, and I'm running for the state senate here in LD12. I moved here in 1996. I fell in love with the area, and I fell in love with my wife, who is a teacher, and we have 2 sons. I'm an educator, and I've taught everything from kindergarten to 12th grade, and I've worked in school administration. I've also been in the private sector in sales and in software, but I'm an educator at heart, and I'm very proud to be back in public education once again after taking a short break. I see public education, K-12 and vocational and post-secondary ed, as an important cornerstone of our democracy. It is a public responsibility and not a consumer good. It's been underfunded. It's been under attack in Arizona for a few years now, and I'd like to change that as a member of the Arizona State Senate. It's my #1 priority, and having said that, I believe having a strong public education system will be good for business and good for the economy. This evening, we don't know the questions that are being asked, but I hope that I'm able to convey to you the importance of a solid public education system and an economy that revolves around the middle class, and how that will help businesses grow, and how fighting corruption and waste will help strengthen our economy and our image. I hope we can talk more about the public good that government should provide, because I like clean water. I like eating food that isn't going to kill me. I like knowing my kids aren't going to get polio. I like knowing that if I need help, police and fire will be there to help me. I like knowing my medicine is safe, my roads and bridges are safe. Government isn't all bad, and they do serve a purpose, and that purpose should be to work for us and help improve our lives. And lastly, I think in this area and really across the country, Republicans are struggling to decide whether or not the Tea Party aligns with their hopes and dreams for themselves and for their country. So we think we have a better message on the economy and on education and on government, and we want the votes of Democrats and independents and some of the moderate Republicans in LD12. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Eddie Farnsworth.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I thank the Clean Elections Commission and those who are here in attendance, my opponents and colleagues in the Senate. Like Senator Biggs, I am not required to be here, but I think it's important that I'm here so that the voters can hear from me, from my opponent, and then make a choice based upon our positions. I have served in the legislature for some time. I started to do that because I believe in Arizona. This is the place that I've chosen to live. I was born and raised here. I was born in Mesa, raised in Chandler, graduated from Chandler High School, and my wife and I decided we want to raise our children here. So that's probably fairly rare nowadays to find those who were born and raised here. But what it means is I believe that the service that we provide is critical for the future of Arizona. And so we've taken the approach, I believe in limited government. You'll find that there's a big difference between my opponent and myself based upon what we think Arizona should be and what the role of government should be. I believe in a limited role of government. I believe that individual responsibility is important, but there are areas where government should be involved. And in those cases, we allow that to happen, but we have to do it with constraints. So my opportunity to serve has been, I've been in the House for 12 years. I've served as the majority leader, and I've served on the Judiciary Committee for 8 years as the chair. I will continue to bring that conservative view. I will continue to bring my skills as someone who has a degree in economics, an MBA with a specialty in finance and investments, and a law degree. I'm a small business owner. I've dealt in the small business arena as an entrepreneur for many, many years. I bring that skill set, I bring the experience, I bring the education to this job, and I ask you for your support so that I can serve you for another 2 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. DJ Rothans.
Good evening. I'd like to thank you for being here. I'd like to thank my opponents for this opportunity to discuss the issues. I'm married 45 years next month. I've lived in Arizona since 1961. I went to 4 different schools in Arizona, all rural Arizona. And I found out in that time that education is different from place to place. I went to one school where there were quite a few Native Americans, and the school system there was completely different than when I went to Kingman High School, which was mostly Caucasians. I don't think that this is right. America works best, and especially Arizona, when everyone has equal opportunity, a level playing field. The Republican Party has had control of the state legislature for the last 30 years. And in that 30 years, Arizona's gone from a place where people want to be to a place where people want to be from. We are the laughingstock of the nation. We're talked about more on late night television than any other state. This is not right. This is something we need to change. In order for the middle class to have disposable income, we need to have opportunity to buy the goods and services that are produced locally, and we have to have disposable income to do that. And with disposable income, you're going to have recreation of clean water and clean air. We need to think about conserving our water and our air. 40 years ago, I worked at the Santan Powerhouse and was 5 miles from a paved road. Now it's in the middle of town. We need a plan for the future. I would like to think that we can get together and work together and have a plan. And right is right. It doesn't matter what party you are. I would like an opportunity to serve you in the state legislature. Thank you.
Thank you. In an attempt to lighten the mood for tonight's debate, we're going to do a quick lightning round of this or that. This will allow us to get to know the candidates a little more. Candidates, please just answer with one word. Mr. Andy Biggs, Droid, iPhone, or Windows?
Droid.
Mr. Scott Glover,
iPhone.
Mr. Eddie Farnsworth, Droid, iPhone, or Windows?
iPhone.
Mr. DJ Rothans,
iPhone.
Mr. Andy Biggs, CNN, Fox News, or MSNBC?
Fox News.
CNN. Oh, sorry, I jumped the gun.
Mr. Scott Glover,
CNN.
Mr. Eddie Farnsworth,
Fox News.
Mr. DJ Rothans.
CNN.
Thank you. Now let's move on to our audience and debate questions. Mr. Andy Biggs, what will your top priority be if elected?
As you may or may not be aware, the top priority and the most important function, quite frankly, of the state legislature by its constitutional parameters is a budget. And we have budgetary issues that we need to resolve, and that will be my top priority, because nothing that state government does or can do, nothing that its subsidiaries or subdivisions of the state need to do can be handled unless we are very careful stewards of the resources that we take from the taxpayers.
Thank you. Mr. Scott Glover,
Could you just repeat the question one more time, please?
what will be your top priority if elected?
Okay. Well, my top priority, as I said in my opening statement, is public education. I am concerned about the proliferation of charter schools that are for-profit and not-for-profit in Arizona, and the drain that they are on our public education system. The privatization of our schools is a great concern, and when you have when your goal is to make a profit, that profit comes at the expense of students because you are responsible to stockholders. It's why our public schools are public and free to all. Finding and fixing the educational formula, I think, is a big task. Ours is antiquated and it's messy, and I think almost everybody agrees on that. So I would work very, very hard to make sure that happens. And when you have good, strong schools, businesses will want to come to Arizona, people will want to come to Arizona, and we won't have the negative image that we sometimes have.
Thank you. Mr. Eddie Farnsworth.
Thank you. The number one priority has to be the budget. By constitutional fiat and mandate, that is the only thing that the legislature has to deal with constitutionally. So it has to be the number one issue. In addition, as Mr. Biggs said, everything that we do has to come from the, if you will, the budget is the spoke of a wagon wheel, and everything else comes out from the, the hub, and everything else is a spoke coming out from that hub. If we don't have a fiscally sound budget, if we're not a fiscally sound state, then it doesn't matter what we want to do in education or in public safety or in any of the other programs, we won't have the money to do it. So that has to be the number one issue, and it will continue to be the number one issue as long as that's a constitutional mandate and all other programs are derived through a sound fiscal policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. D.J. Rothans.
My number one priority would be education, and our education system does not pay our teachers near enough money. And there's no incentive for a teacher or for a student to become a teacher when the starting pay for a teacher is below what it takes to qualify for public assistance. Why would you go to college for 4 or 5 or 6 years and create a debt and then go to work in a job that you can't even make a living at, let alone pay back your debt? My thinking is we need to increase the amount of money that we pay our teachers, and I think if we were to do that, we'd have better results, and I think that education should be our number one priority. We have balanced the budget, which is so important to my opponent, on the backs of our children. We've taken $3 billion away from our children, and that's not right. We finally were mandated to give back $1 billion and some dollars at $317 million a year that our current governor wants to fight. I want to work with the children, not against them. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question for Mr. Scott Glover. How will you find funding for the millions of dollars due to public schools?
Well, there's always, everybody believes in government, that there's fraud and corruption and waste everywhere to be found. The privatization of our prisons is a definite area that we could save quite a bit of money. Arizona our prison population has gone up, our population has gone up 100% in the last 20 years. Our prison population has gone up over 1,000%. We are number 2 in prison spending, and we are number 1 in the West in incarceration. I think if we start looking at ways to curtail, to deal with nonviolent offenders that are alternatives to filling up these privatized prisons that are for profit, we can save a lot of money there. It's not in a private prison. It's not in their best interest to make sure that people don't come back. It's in their best interest to make sure those prisons are full. So they spend less on things that would help keep people out of prison and education in prison and addiction counseling and things like that. So lots of opportunities for savings there. I also think that if charter schools that call themselves public schools, if they really want to be public schools, then their finances should be public, and they are not. We don't know how much money some of these folks make, and frankly, we're indifferent when we hear that charter school operators could make $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, and we scoff at how much teachers make. So there are opportunities if we were able to look at those numbers and books and see, and I think the public would be shocked to know how much money is being diverted from what I would call public education.
Thank you. Mr. Eddie Farnsworth.
Thank you. The answer, actually, I'll try to be on point. We only have a couple of choices. We either reduce the spending that we have in other areas or we increase taxes. There's not enough. We actually have our hands tied because of what we have Prop 105, which says that the legislature can't overturn or can't change any of the issues that were passed at the ballot. Between that and mandates from the courts, we actually only control maybe 30% of the budget. That's made it very difficult. Some of those things that are not covered are some of the K-12 education and higher education. That's why they tend to be the focus of some of these cuts, is because those are the areas that people have said that we have the latitude to deal with. Other areas we don't have the latitude. And that was done at the ballot. Under Prop 105, we can't change that. So we have a choice. We either reduce the fund or reduce funding elsewhere, or we have to increase taxes. That's the bottom line. I'd like to address just briefly what was said earlier. It's remarkable to me that this idea that the state's going to do everything and we shouldn't privatize any of the services. Access is privatized. Those are private doctors. The road builders are private. Privatization has gone on and has existed ever since the beginning of the state. So it's absolutely absurd to start culling out certain areas and say that privatization, just because it's private, doesn't work. That doesn't make any sense. So if we want to do away with privatization, let's do it at all levels, and the government will control everything that we do in this state. And I don't think that the people want that. So the issue is whether there is sufficient accountability, which I believe that there is in both private prisons and in charter schools. And so anyway, that didn't answer the question on that side, but for me, it comes down to we either have to reduce the services in other areas or we have to increase taxes.
Thank you. Mr. DJ Rothans,
Would you please repeat the question?
how will you find funding for the millions of dollars due to public schools?
I think to find the funding, we need to look at where it's going. We're spending $7,000 a year per student, but yet we're spending $22,000 a year per prisoner to keep them incarcerated. The private prisons are guaranteed a profit, they're guaranteed occupancy, and they're guaranteed healthy prisoners. The state doesn't have that guarantee, and they incarcerate for less money than the private prisons. I think that we need to address this. I think that this is corporate welfare, and it needs to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Andy Biggs.
Thank you. I'm astounded when I hear people say, let's get in and deal with private prisons. And we just heard someone make an assertion, blanket, baldly false, saying that the state public prisons are cheaper to operate than the privates. That's not true. We do pay less to the prisons, absolutely, to the privatized prisons. They also have the same mandates. The state runs those mandates. We tell them what they have to do as far as retraining of the population. That they're not getting the same opportunities as in the other prisons is just flat out erroneous. The second thing is I've heard repeatedly this idea that a charter school is a private school. That's not true. They also have the same type of public school mandates that we place on traditional public schools. But when we have to solve these types of issues that are of the magnitude of hundreds of millions to billions of dollars, I think it is a simple, quite frankly, I don't mean to be offensive, a naive notion to say, well, hey, there's probably $500 million worth of corruption a year that we can sort out. Let me tell you, we actually work on trying to find corruption and cutting it out. We are looking at all kinds of ways to reduce spending. But let me give you an example. Access or socialized medicine, because that's what it is, because it's state-funded medicine, has grown by 5% of the overall budget pot in the last 10 years. Concomitantly, it has squeezed out 5% of education's portion of that pot. We have a limited budget. We have a $29 billion budget for this year. The general fund is $9.6 billion. Of that, the state legislature controls roughly $3.5 billion. You tell me how you're going to find $300 million in private prisons. That's silly. We have to look everywhere we can, and Representative Farnsworth is correct. People are going to ask for taxes, and other people are going to need to be reduced.
Thank you. Our next question, starting with Mr. Eddie Farnsworth. What was your opinion of Governor Brewer's decision last year to expand Medicaid in Arizona?
Well, that's a good question. And that was a tough decision because the challenge we have is that the mandates coming down from the federal government certainly are putting a tremendous burden upon the state and upon the state budget. When we deal with Obamacare, which I am 100% opposed to, in fact, I believe it's unconstitutional. I disagree with the Supreme Court's decision. When they start tying taxation into decision-making, they have essentially nullified the 10th Amendment, and and the authority that is with the sovereign states. But with that said, it has been upheld, so right now it's constitutional. That puts a tremendous burden on the states. The state had to deal with it, and there weren't a lot of good options. I disagreed with the governor. I continue to disagree with the governor because I think what they're doing is creating a short-term gain for a long-term burden, and that's where my opposition is. We will get some benefit on the front end where the federal government puts some federal money into the Medicaid at the local level, but in the long run, that Medicaid money is not going to continue to flow, and that ultimately will be the burden upon the backs of the taxpayers here in Arizona. And I can tell you, I'm not sure how we deal with that when that comes. That's going to be large enough that I think it is going to create a fiscal crisis unlike anything else that we've ever seen, including a few years ago when we had a $3 billion structural deficit. So I disagreed with it, but it is a very complex issue that can't really be resolved in a minute and a half discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. DJ Rothans.
I agree with the decision to expand Medicaid. I was a recipient of the benefit of that at almost $3 a month. I am difficult time figuring out why it's working the way it is. My opponent mentioned short-term gain and long-term cost. That would be about like pawning our government buildings. That was a short-term gain for a long-term cost. I don't see the parallel in those two. But I definitely think that the Supreme Court upheld it. It doesn't mean that it was up to individuals to say yay or nay. If they said it's good, it's good. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Andy Biggs.
Thank you. That was a really dramatic issue that was considered in the legislature 2 years ago. And I just want to tell you where we are today because of the expansion of Obamacare into Arizona. Of our Medicaid and Medicare costs, about 2/3 of the state receives that. That's government subsidized health care. 34% of the state is either covered by private insurance plans, self-insured, or without insurance. The recent data and studies indicate that nationally, you have actually seen a slight increase in the uninsured over the pre-Obamacare expansion. In Arizona also, if you were to look at air transport for ambulance service, you'll see that 20% of that is covered by private insurance, others 20% is self-insured or donated care, and 60% is Medicare or Medicaid. When we expanded that, it continued the perpetuation of crowding out other programs through expansion of social welfare services. When you do that, unless you expand your revenue pot, which means new taxes, then that means that you're not going to be able to provide what our most fundamental public services are, which is education is a constitutional service and public safety. Those two must not be crowded out, but we allow it to be crowded out through the Obamacare expansion. And that's where I was.
Thank you. Mr. Scott Glover.
Well, when Medicaid contracted in 2010, unreimbursed health care costs skyrocketed. Our rural hospitals would have gone into receivership without some of this money. It brought over $1.5 billion into the state, saved 20,000 jobs, and helped mentally ill people have access to some of the treatment they need. So I will always support policy over politics. I'm going to use the rest of my time to go back to some of the things that were said earlier. I'll look at anything that will help save money and raise revenues to fund the things that we want to fund and that we value and are important. The idea of private prisons was just one idea. They are more costly and they provide less. They do screen the type of prisoners that they take. They don't take our most unhealthy. Violence against the staff is higher. They are not subject to public records requests because they are a private corporation. You know, the idea that charter schools are public is right out of Alec's playbook. They are privatized. We have a group in America that has an implacable hostility towards the public sector. And these folks have no trouble transferring public funds to private management and creating thousands of deregulated, unsupervised, unaccountable schools They have no problem opening up the public coffers to profiteering, fraud, exploitation by large and small entrepreneurs. A good society has a vibrant private sector, and I support that, and so does DJ, and a responsible public sector. So we just cannot be persuaded by this false crisis narrative to privatize our schools. It's not philanthropy, it is profit-making.
Thank you. Our next question will go to Mr. DJ Rothans. As a legislator, what would your first priority be in working towards a balanced budget?
In order to balance the budget, I would think you're going to have to close the tax loopholes that cost the many and benefit the few. I would research those. Some of them have been spoke tonight. We disagree on where they are. That's why they make Fords and Chevys. You get together and work things out. It doesn't matter who has the best idea, whether it's mine or someone else's. I'm willing to work with someone who has a good idea. It doesn't have to be partisan politics. But we do need to agree on where the cuts have to come. And if they're benefiting the few at the cost of the many, those are the ones I think that we need to work out first. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Andy Biggs.
Well, I think that in reality, we are facing a problem not of the same order that we faced in 2008, where when our Democratic governor left the state, she left us with a $3 billion hole. And she got there with the support of her Democratic friends in the legislature. Our problem is not of the same magnitude, but it is substantial. And so when I hear let's cut the tax loopholes, the first one that comes to my mind that might be effective, and this would reduce literally tens of millions, maybe more than that, would be all of the solar energy subsidies we give. We give solar subsidies to build, to buy, to install, and most people don't realize that they're also paying for solar subsidies in their own utility bill, because there's transfers in those that are built right in there that go, and that's part of the credit. So when the utility companies call you, they'll say, did you know that there's this plan for you to get this kind of subsidy from us? Well, that subsidy comes from everybody who's paying the $1 to $2 extra per month, maybe more, on their solar bill. So that might be a tax break that we might look at. There are other things that I don't disagree with Mr. Rothans with regard to looking at something like with the ACA, which has a fund that gets funded to the tune of $25 million per year. We probably need to look at that. It has, sitting in that fund right now, for instance, $55 million plus that it has not given out to, ostensibly to recruit businesses to come here. I do think that you have to keep a fair regulatory state as well as a tax base that generates the type of businesses that have seen in Arizona in excess of 20,000 new jobs within the last 6 months, many of them high-paying jobs, for instance, at the GM Tech Center, which opened just about a month ago, to 500 jobs averaging $75,000 per year.
Thank you. Mr. Scott Glover?
Could you just repeat the question one more time, please?
Yes.
Thanks.
As a legislator, what would your first priority be in working towards a balanced budget?
Okay, well, the budget is huge. It's $8.8 billion, is that right? Probably, no, higher. It's a large budget, and you have to work with what you have, and we're constitutionally required to balance the budget. So it's a negotiation. I think you have to set your priorities, and obviously I've said that my priority is public education, which I think will trickle over to business and making people want to come here. So I'd love it if our legislature worked a little bit more openly with their budgets, and the process was a little bit more public, and you could get more public input. Sometimes one party that might be in the minority can be shut out of budget negotiations, and that can be frustrating, and that's not ultimately good for Arizona because it doesn't provide for the needs of the many different people. So we just have to set our priorities, and I've told you what my priorities are, and you just have to figure out how to fund these things.
Thank you. Mr. Eddie Farnsworth.
Thank you. I will talk about what I think should be done more from a process. Mr. Biggs covered a number of the issues that we can deal with. But from a process, what we ought to be doing is a zero-based budget. We ought to say everybody's at zero, and then we prioritize based upon the Constitution. So I agree, education is a high priority, and it is right along the lines of DPS. Public safety is also a constitutionally mandated service. So we ought to prioritize those before everything else. We ought to fully fund them, and then at the point where we run out of money, we have to start deciding whether we're going to not fund those non-constitutionally mandated programs or whether we're going to raise taxes to pay for them. That's what we have to do. So I think if we did that, I think we would be more efficient, we'd be more effective, we'd be able to get rid of the waste, but there has been a tremendous opposition to that, including in the Democrat caucus, so it hasn't happened yet. But I will continue to beat that drum that we need to have zero-based budgeting. If we don't do that, I think then we will continue to see where we simply set a baseline from last year's spending, then we decide if we're going to spend more or we're going to spend less. And that's really not the way it should be done. So that's my approach. I can tell you I have a minute left. I want to respond to a couple of comments. Gentleman to my right, Mr. Glover, has made some pretty outlandish allegations about fraud and about abuse, et cetera, in charter schools. I would ask him to defend that with evidence. We can show just as much. Anytime you have individuals, you're going to have people who are going to make bad decisions. We have those bad decisions in district schools. We have bad decisions in private schools, in charter schools. We have them in churches. We have them in government because people are free to make bad decisions. But I find it to be quite loose to start making allegations without backing those things up. So anyway, that's what I would do with the budget. We need to prioritize, and the priorities need to be constitutionally based, and then work down from there.
Thank you. At this time, we will move into candidate-to-candidate questions. Each candidate will have the opportunity to ask a question of his opponent. The first question is from Mr. Andy Biggs to Mr. Scott Glover.
Okay. So my question is this. Can you tell me what the 3-year fiscal year budget deficit is projected to be and your proposals for solving the problem?
No.
Thank you. The next question will be from Mr. Glover for Mr. Andy Biggs.
Sure, and this will somewhat address Representative Farnsworth's comments because the records of charter schools, privatized schools, they don't have to be released. So one can only guess how much owners and operators of charter schools make. And so my question is, Senator Biggs, would you be willing to propose legislation to increase transparency for all charter schools, profits and nonprofits, so that taxpayers will know what is being spent, who is earning what, and where all the tax money is going?
My position would be this. The ADE receives reports from each charter school, just like it receives from each district, regarding the money that is being spent with regard to allocation, ADM, et cetera. The outcomes of the charter schools, and I'll just make a comment because it deals with what you're getting at. I don't understand in this campaign that you've raised this as an issue because, quite frankly, at the legislature, the Democrats realize that a quality education for children that is driven by the parental choice is essential. When you have 20% of your K-12 population now in these schools, to continue to say, because this is really, you're laying the foundation, ultimately what you would, I'm not going to project what you would hope, but folks I've heard like you project this idea of let's close charter schools. That is so unlikely to happen that what we need to be discussing then is what is the next generation of education to look like. Are you going to protect the system that you have probably roughly 75% of your students in, or are you going to protect all of the kids and try to get the best education for all the kids? And that's what I'm after. So when you ask about transparency, I don't have a problem with saying let's find out how many kids do they have, what's their ADM. But I do think that there is plenty of transparency there. There's audits that are done, and we can find out what's going on there. And since it's market-driven, an unsuccessful school, poorly run, can be shut down through the charter system, but they're not shut down in the K-12 district school system. They can persist, and that's one of the areas we should probably look at as well.
Thank you. Our next question is from Mr. Eddie Farnsworth for Mr. DJ Rothans.
Well, I'd ask the same question to Mr. Rothans, since they continue to suggest that there's a whole lot of money to spend out there. Do you know what the 3-year projected deficit is, the structural deficit, and what would you do to fix it?
No, I do not. I've not been privileged with that information. This is my initial endeavor into this, and I'm finding out what's hot by getting burnt and sharp what's by getting cut. I can look into that. I don't have a clue, and that's the truth.
Okay.
Thank you. So the final candidate question will be asked by Mr. DJ Rothans for Mr. Eddie Farnsworth.
We heard President of the Senate Biggs say that we have 4 of the top schools in the nation. We also have 72% of our 4th graders can't read at proficient level. 62% of the districts don't have teachers in all their positions. Where 23% of Arizona students don't graduate on time. You can cherry pick results like you cherry pick for charter schools and pick good parts. But I want a level playing field for everyone, and we don't have that right now. Charter schools don't have to have certified teachers. They don't have to put their work out to bid. I would like you to tell me why you think that's fair.
I'm happy to do it. You're actually incorrect. You're correct on the charter schools don't have to have certified teachers. I would suggest that we make that the standard for district schools also. Pick the people that are the best, although 70% of charter school operators do hire certified teachers. So even though it's not a mandate, 7 out of 10 teachers are certified in charter schools. The other piece is that they don't have to go out to bid is not correct. There are standards that are set by the State Board for Charter Schools for bidding requirements over certain thresholds. So that's not accurate. The issue about the budget, that's all public record. I just want to point that out so you could get that. I'll address the issue of the charter schools, since that's where you're trying to drive this. The reality is that we are obligated as charter schools to deal with the same health and safety regulations. The funding is all open and public. It's appropriated by the legislature. It is approved and dealt with at the Department of Education or the State Board for Charter Schools. There are compliance audits that are done. There are annual financial audits that are done, and the state can come in and do any other audits, including special ed audits, at any time they want. So there is tremendous open and accountable information that's out there. I find it remarkable that you're trying to focus upon the operations rather than the performance. When you look at schools, whether they're districts or whether they're charters, you ought to be looking at performance. I personally don't care how a district operates, whether they use computers or whether they use teachers to teach the kids, if the kids can perform. So I think that we are mistaken, and I think that it's a fool's errand to try to micromanage all the operations rather than focusing on the outputs. When you look at the outputs, then you can discuss individual charters and individual districts. But that's the appropriate way to deal with this. Thank you.
Thank you. Our last question for the evening will start with Mr. Scott Glover. How do you feel about an increase in the minimum wage?
I am in favor of an increase in the minimum wage, and Arizona is actually a little bit above the minimum wage. But when you put more money into the pockets of the working class person and people who will spend it, the economy improves. Currently, the policies sort of are directed at corporations, and corporate profits have never been higher, but wages have been relatively flat. So increasing the minimum wage, again, is good for people we're a consumer economy. So if you put it in the pockets of people who will spend it, that's good for everybody. And so I would support that wholeheartedly. And in fact, places like Washington State that raised the minimum wage in '98, people said it was going to be a job killer. Their job growth went up, wages went up. In 1996, when the minimum wage was raised, again, people predicted millions of job losses, and that just did not come to be. We had a 4-year period of some of the most, the best job growth in the history of our country. So I'm in favor.
Thank you. Mr. Eddie Farnsworth.
I'm absolutely opposed. Wage controls have to do with the redistribution of corporate assets. It's a government-mandated welfare system. And what we're looking at is this. People can negotiate their wages. If they don't like the wages, they can go somewhere else. But somebody put their life savings, somebody built the property, somebody built the business, and that's what it is. It's a property. And so for government to come in and say, we're going to force you to pay somebody above the market rate is simply government putting price controls. Price controls don't work. And the fallacy is, you may see growth if you see an increase in the economy, but that doesn't mean that there aren't lost jobs. The potential for increase in jobs actually suffers. Those who are there, those who have an opportunity to be hired, some will be hired, some won't. That's what we're facing right now in Arizona, the businesses that are saying, you know what, under Obamacare, under the wage controls, we're not going to hire part-time people above 30 hours, because if they do, that FTE goes against them, and then they have to pay a penalty. That's just a fact. You can see that with the corporations across the country that are responding to that. So these price controls, these mandates, they don't work. They do strangle the economy. The economy is not able to be robust. You can see that right now with a very flat Keynesian approach where we're going to pump trillions of dollars into the economy by printing money has the same effect. We have a very, very flat recovery. That flat recovery shouldn't exist when you put $4 trillion into an economy, but it does. So this doesn't work. It's a Band-Aid. All it does is mean that those people who own the company, who have invested in the company, who have taken the risk, the government essentially has stolen that and redirected it, in my opinion, unconstitutionally. So I vehemently oppose it.
Thank you. Mr. DJ Rothans.
I'm 100% in support of a minimum wage. Everyone thinks that a CEO of a corporation makes $50 million. That's wonderful. But for a working man to make $40 an hour, oh my God, that's horrible. We can't have that. Well, look at it a different way. The guy making all that money buys 1 or 2 houses, 1 or 2 cars, and puts the rest of his money in an offshore account, like our past president had a seminar on the islands to tell people how to do that, and when no one was invited except millionaires. That's not right. You give a working man another $1 an hour, they're going to have disposable income, they're going to buy the goods and services that are produced locally, and it's going to stimulate the economy. The middle class spends the money, and the upper class keeps it. And if you're going to put money into the economy, put it in the middle class hands and do the economy some good. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Andy Biggs.
Thank you. I'm opposed to an increase in the mandatory minimum wage. I mean, you can't get a starker contrast than my opponent and me and Mr. Rothans, Mr. Farnsworth. I mean, I think we could agree to disagree on almost every issue probably, but Representative Farnsworth, I thought explained it very well, but I'll just do my kind of egghead type of approach. When I look at Frederic Bastiat, who is a French economist of the mid-1800s, he wrote a tract that talked about what you can see and what you can't see. And he talked about things in the economic point of view, and typically people respond to economics by what they see on the surface of things, such as minimum wage. Let's raise the minimum wage. What could possibly happen by raising the minimum wage? Well, especially the numbers that we're hearing that some people want to go to 15 or 16, and some people talk about living wage. Well, what becomes a living wage if everybody's this? You have no way to define what that is. But when he starts talking about what you can't see, that's all of the ideas of what happens that people can't really see would happen. Such as when Representative Farnsworth talked about, yeah, you can say maybe the jobs environment in Washington were solid, but if you analyze the years that my opponent was talking about, they were solid throughout the nation and even more robust in Arizona than they were in that particular state. But you didn't see the lost opportunities by entrepreneurs. And in Arizona, you can cherry pick, is the word my colleague down at the end said before, you can cherry pick a few CEOs of big businesses, but most CEOs in Arizona are small mom and pop businesses who employ 90% of the private sector people in this country. I mean, in this state. That's who creates the jobs. You will squeeze them out with a mandatory minimum wage increase.
Thank you. We will now move into the closing statements. The first closing statement will be given by Mr. D.J. Rothans.
The basis of my campaign is a privatization of public schools for profit is wrong. I think that if you're going to educate children, if there's any money left over, you need to put it back into the system, not into a rich man's pocket. Not necessarily my opponent, a rich corporation, let's put it that way. I'm going to keep this generalized and not individualized. There's 39 states that allow charter schools. Only 3 of them, the teachers do not have to be certified. Arizona is one of them. Mr. Farnsworth said 7 out of 10 teachers in charter schools are certified. I was not aware of that. I'm running because I think Arizona can do better. There are policies and tax loopholes that benefit the few at the cost of the many. I don't think that's right. I think that if everyone works hard, follows the same rules, they should have the chance to live the American dream. That's the basis of my campaign. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Eddie Farnsworth.
Thank you. Again, I appreciate the opportunity to be here to express my views. There really are no secrets with me. I've been serving. People know what I stand for. I am unabashedly a conservative. I believe in individual liberty. I believe in individual responsibility. I don't think it's the government's purview to decide they're going to redistribute wealth or take care of us. There certainly is that responsibility, but that's an individual responsibility. When government decides that they're going to force us, in my opinion, they violate the Constitution. The government receives its authority from the people. The people cannot delegate any authority that they don't hold, and I guarantee you that we don't hold the authority individually to force people to take care of other people. It doesn't happen. So if we are a government of delegated authority, then we cannot do these things that can't be delegated, not legally. But we ignore the Constitution, we ignore the restrictions on government because we believe that it's compassionate. I submit to you that compassion is at the individual level and not at the government level. So what does that mean? I support government that is limited, that functions in the areas that it is supposed to. I was just a part of the child welfare team appointed by the governor. I was a co-sponsor on that, and we put together legislation that deals with those children who were abused and neglected. That's a proper role of government. We ought to do that. Department of Public Safety, a proper role of government. Education, proper role of government. I support those things, but they still have to be limited in the context in which they should be operating. That's where I've always stood. That's where I will continue to stand. I'm a pro property rights. I am pro limited government. I am pro fiscal responsibility. I'm pro individual responsibility. That's what I will be in the future. I ask you for your vote, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Scott Glover.
All right. Well, thank you to everyone for showing up and for taking time to watch this, those of you who are watching online. Family aside, this is one of the great honors of my life, having the opportunity to run for public office. I'm one who taught kids to stand up for what they believe in, and so here I am. Obviously, we have different economic philosophies. I was raised to believe that trickle-down economics worked, but the realities are, and the data and the evidence shows that it doesn't. These guys can talk about how much they value education, but it wasn't me who cut community college education 50%. It wasn't me that university costs have gone up to the point where I worry why anyone in their right mind would become a social worker or an artist or a teacher and go to college and have just a mountain of debt. If you want evidence, as I was asked, you can read Diane Ravitch, Reign of Error. Her expose on the privatization of schools is phenomenal. I can post a link on my website of an Arizona Republic expose on some of the things that the nonprofit charter schools were involved in. So anytime I have a chance to save us money in government, I will. I just believe that we need a strong, robust, true public education system. There already is school choice in Arizona. Just in District 12, Higley, Gilbert, and Queen Creek, there's over 50 public non-charter schools. And I drive around to my house and I see all these new buildings of these gigantic, really nice looking charter schools, and I wonder who's paying for it. It's us. These guys get about $1,600 on average extra, and who owns those buildings? You have to ask yourself that. and who's paying for them. So these are concerns that I have, and as a matter of fact, about 90% of charter schools, I think, have an exemption on some of the public bidding procurement issues that what I call public schools are not privy to. So hopefully things are changing. I don't like seeing Arizona portrayed in a negative light. SB 1070, 1062, 2305, we didn't get to talk about those, and I'm getting the stop sign. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Andy Biggs.
Thank you. Again, I thank Clean Elections for inviting me, and thank you for being here, and people watching elsewhere. But I will say you really have what I would say one of the starkest bright line choices you can make with what we've heard. But I also think you should have a real flavor. If education is your highest aspiration for policy, you better know how you're going to fund it. So you really ought to just go to the internet, click on azleg.gov, that anybody can get to, and click on the legislature and go to the JLBC tab, and it'll give you the projections. So you would never have to say in a debate, I don't know what the projected deficit's going to be, and I don't know how much money we're going to have. Because if you're going to try to fund education at its highest level, you better know what the bank has for you. That's critical. And so we have a massive problem coming. And we better take it very seriously. Seriously enough to go to the website and look. I'll give you a little anecdote. When we first came into the recession, Arizona lost about 1/3 of its total revenue over a 9-month period. And we simply didn't know how we were even going to make payroll. We had the state treasurer come in every week and tell us how much he was borrowing overnight just to make payroll. Well, my proposal, as I was meeting with a teachers union official, was this. We can make sufficient, I believe, reductions in social welfare programs to hold K-12 harmless. I just need the support of the teachers to do that. His response was, why do you Republicans always want to cut social programs at the expense of education or vice versa? And that isn't what it was. We were trying to save the education program as much as we could, and we couldn't get that simple help and assistance and support. Anyway, these are things you need to be aware of. Thank you.
Thank you. And to our candidates, we thank you very much for participating in our forum. To our audience, we thank you for taking the time to come and inform yourselves before voting. We encourage you to find out more about the clean elections and the candidates running for office by visiting www.azcleanelections.gov. A link to the video of this debate, as well as other clean election debates, will be posted on that site within 72 hours of a scheduled debate. We also ask that you fill out the evaluation forms you received as you entered and return it to one of our volunteers. Your feedback is important to the Commission. Thank you all for coming tonight, and have a safe trip home.